Welcome to Superstitions and Traditions. I'm Kristen.
And I'm Trish. Kristen's aunt.
Still my aunt.
Still your aunt. Still your aunt.
And this is our podcast, Mine and My Aunt's.
Because I'm her aunt.
Podcast of history, shenanigans, and the people and decisions and strange occurrences that shaped our lives today.
Oh, and there are a lot of strange occurrences out there that have shaped who we are.
There are.
That's just in our family.
I know it.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. Today is Am I the Asshole? Historical Edition. And we are going to talk about Rosalind Franklin.
I love her.
I know you do.
I love her. Okay, so I'm going to hear your stuff and then I'll add my stuff because...
Okay, I'm going to let you because you know I am history-minded, not science-minded. And Miss Rosalind was quite the science mind.
Oh, yes, she was. Yes, especially for back in the...
Yes.
Wait, look, I did go away. Yes, especially for back in the 50s when that was not a normal field in which you would find women.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so the question is, am I the asshole for refusing to assist with the war effort despite my father begging me to?
Oh, Rosalind. Tell me more, tell me more.
All right. I was born to an affluent family in Notting Hill, London. We were Jewish, my father a banker and professor at Working Man's College, and my mother was devoted to helping those less fortunate than we were. I was the second oldest of 5. My family was active in British politics. I showed academic promise early in my childhood. My auntie described me as alarmingly clever.
Ooh, that's a very good description.
I love it. I entered St. Paul's Girls' School at age 11, one of the only girls' schools to teach physics and chemistry, which I excelled in. I also learned to speak French and German fluently while at St. Paul's. My family assisted the Jewish refugees who were able to escape the Nazis. I earned.
See how much one letter can make a
changes
difference.
The whole thing.
Yes, it does.
I earned a scholarship for university, but my father asked that I give it up to a refugee student. I complied, knowing my family had the means to pay for my education, but he also expected I give up attending university for a year or two to assist with the war effort. That was something I just could not do. We argued. My mother stepped in and convinced my father to allow me to attend university and to fund my education.
Good for Mom.
I attended Cambridge, though as a woman, I was not eligible for a degree.
So many things I want to say, but just keep moving on.
I earned a second-class honors in 1941. In 1947, they changed, and all of the women who had earned the second-class honors were awarded a bachelor's or master's
Thank
degree.
goodness, because when we talk more about her, she's had a lot of little... 4 years earlier, and...
Yeah. I forged relationships during my time in Cambridge that would prove to be instrumental in my career. During my research fellowship, I joined the physical chemistry lab at the University of Cambridge under Ronald George Rayford Nourish. And because I was a woman, he had a hard time assigning work to me. I resigned after only a year. I met the requirements to serve as a BCURA, British Coal Utilization Research Association, and studied the porosity of coal. I also volunteered as an air raid warden.
Oh, yes, yes.
Oh, I forgot we're not in the... After World War II, I began looking for work as a physical chemist who knows very little physical chemistry, but quite a lot about the holes in coal.
As one should.
That is how she built herself.
Yes.
I loved that description.
I know, don't you love that? And it makes you want to think maybe, Rosalind, you should rewrite your resume a little bit. Okay, it all ends up here down the road a little.
Let's work on that. But
yes.
Yeah, good for her.
Yes. I know a lot about the holes in coal. Okay.
Important work, I'm sure.
Yes.
At a conference, I met the director of the French CNRS and began working as a researcher with Jacques Mering through them. He was an X-ray crystallographer. I published many papers studying the X-ray crystallography to amorphous substances. I was given a 3-year fellowship at King's College London, and in 1951 started working in the field of biophysics.
Oh, yes. Now we're getting to the Rosalind Franklin I love. Well, I love the part of her that studied the holes in coal, too. I mean,
who doesn't?
I love rocks.
I love rocks, too.
We love rocks.
I love that she studied rocks for quite a while.
Yes, she did. Okay.
I was directed to work on X-ray diffraction of proteins and lipids, but with the developments in DNA research, I was given a task working with DNA fibers. I applied my expertise of X-ray diffraction to the structure of DNA. I made a camera chamber to control the humidity. Mm-hmm. I soon discovered the spiral structure of DNA and presented my discovery at a lecture in November of 1951. The man overseeing my work felt I presented with an air of superiority and divided additional work on my discovery between me and a male colleague. Mm-hmm. Okay. Another team was given a paper on my research. Watson and Crick ended up receiving credit for my work. I had transferred to another college and was forced to leave my research at King's. I did ask to see their model. The team published their work and model, and I at the same time published mine in the same issue. And it was a magazine called, or a journal, scientific journal called Nature.
Oh, yes. I love Nature.
And then she ended up publishing more in that also.
Right. Later on. Right.
We published at the same time, but mine was viewed as support of their work, and I didn't receive full credit for my discovery. I did, in 1954, publish the first evidence of the double helix in the July issue of Nature with my lab partner Gosling. I went on to study RNA, making discoveries and publishing papers on my discoveries. All knowledge we would not have if I had listened to my father and not attended college.
Okay, well,
I mean, even if it was just waiting a couple of years to help the Jewish refugees.
Right. Because, I mean,
nothing would have lined up for her to meet the X-ray
Watson
crystallographer. Right. Well, the first guy that taught her how to do the X-rays.
Yes. I think, when you look at how Rosalind's life turned out, because, I mean, she was born into this affluent family, but they were very much into helping the Jewish cause and into educating and allowing their children to not necessarily conform to social norms, but to be educated and opinionated and be express themselves.
Yes,
all of those things that I think a lot of you have those characteristics in a male, and it's like, oh, that's a great leader. You have them in a female, and it's like, what a poo-poo head.
Right. The air of superiority.
The air of superiority. I could never think Rosalind Franklin was an asshole. She has been called a lot of things during her lifetime. My favorite is the Dark Lady of DNA.
That was my favorite too.
I mean, you go back to
it's a kind of a witchy
witchy
nickname.
Woman
makes you think witch,
and it's hard to imagine that I mean, it's not like when we had the arms races or when we had the race to space, but it is kind of that same with scientists in that area, because DNA was right there on the forefront. I mean, we were beginning to understand that proteins, even though proteins are real important, that it's DNA that they feel that they are beginning to learn that exchange has the genetic code for everything that we are, and that DNA is that life thriving driving force. So they're trying to study and figure out how it works. And I love that one of the photographs was photograph 51, and I'm thinking,
like Area 51.
Area 51, I know too. Was that just something we always say about that? So
I wonder if we named Area 51 after photograph 51.
I don't know.
How did we
get there?
Where are the other 50?
I know the other
50 photographs and areas,
and It's like, things that make you go, And crystallography.
Which, technically, I think it was photograph 51 because she did the photograph in 1951. But
it could be.
I don't.
Or it could have been. Was it that there were maybe she numbered each one, and that was the 51st photograph? I will be
maybe
honest
she
with
did
you.
one a year. Of course, she had to start before she was born. But
she started before she was born. But in her study, I love the part about studying the holes and coals, because you can kind of see how her career, and I think that's kind of a lesson to all of us as we just get out of college or we just get out of there. It's like, no, I just didn't, you start out at that place where you're understanding the holes in coal, but then, you work and you eventually get to that place where you're being a very important aspect in the discovery of DNA.
Yes, and I loved the physical chemist who knows very little of physical chemistry.
Yes, and I think as we get older, we've all read those resumes from younger people. Let's help you rewrite that.
Let's think about how we're billing ourselves here.
Why might we use it a little bit different here? How can we make that sound better? But the crystallography, and you have to love that, because that's basically giving that substance that physical shape so that we can understand more about how the structure and function of those, the structure of a compound relates to its function. I mean, there's just so much to that. And from a science perspective, I am my nerdy little science.
The science.
I love the science. We learned about DNA in high school. This is how old I am. But not a lot, because a lot of the human genome hadn't been mapped yet. I mean, there were so many. Gosh, I am old. I got to stop a minute and rest. But
so you got to teach. You got to learn and teach it kind of at the same time then.
Kind of, because as science, science is one of those. History stays the same. I mean, for the most part. I mean, you have newer history that you have to learn, but the old history, now, how it is presented, we often find out wasn't presented correct. So
yes.
There's that change there.
So there's,
there's that
different views and perspectives.
But science, you have to continually kind of keep up on. So, in college, we did a little bit with DNA, but then, as a science teacher, you take some more courses and you would learn more as it began to develop. And, I love DNA, and I love that, when you see the photographs, 38 years teaching, and it always, DNA was always my favorite. So you go to this chapter, and here's Watson and Crick, and their double helix structure of DNA, and they have this big picture there. And down here in the little corner is this little sweet picture of Rosalind Franklin peering off into the distance like that. And they're, they're all like, who's Rosalind Franklin? Well, she is the female.
Peering off looking for her credit.
Yes. She is the female that was behind, there's so, like with history and all of that, it's all told. You can see different perspectives from different sides. There's people that said, no, Watson and Crick would have gone ahead and they would have figured out the double helix structure without Rosalind. And then there's others that say, oh, no. Rosalind, that photograph and her knowledge of that was instrumental to that discovery. But, I don't, it's one of those.
It's one of those, eventually, probably, yes, somebody would have. But we also, because I know we want to do a whole thing on this, and when we talk about the Matilda effect, and the Matilda effect is something that's out there in science, something that's out there in art and the humanities and history, and it's this whole great. I mean, since the beginning of time, there have been women that have been, quote, behind the scenes, but
are they really behind the scenes? I mean, they're out there. We're doing the work. They're making the discoveries. They're doing those things. But because during that time period, it wasn't something that women were allowed to do. A lot of their credit was given to their male counterparts. Mm-hmm. So the Matilda effect was a study that, and we'll get into that more about what it was and how it all came to be. But Rosalind falls into that. I mean, here she is. She's studying, she's working, she's doing it. Yeah, she probably was a little, again, if, probably what someone would call bossy.
Probably.
I mean, I call it, I know what I'm doing. I know, I know
but
where
she
I'm going.
also had that, she was born in 1920.
Mm-hmm.
She's working during World War II, which is kind of between World War I and World War II is when women were kind of allowed to step out and know things, but she's still having to prove herself more than her male counterparts are.
Yes.
So,
in fact,
she probably did have to have some force behind when she said, I know what I'm talking about.
So when she first started working, Wilkins thought she was here to be his assistant. I mean, so he's thinking, they've hired me a little lab assistant.
Oh, looky.
So,
you're so cute, too.
Aren't you cute? Here, would you go get me some coffee? So you can imagine what you had. No, I'm not here to get you coffee. I'm here. And that picture 51 has been, many people say that is arguably one of the most famous pictures ever taken. Mm-hmm. Because you look at how think of all the crimes that have been solved because of DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I think of all the crime or all of the criminals that have been set free for false imprisonment because of DNA.
Yes, exactly right. And then, her little story, I mean, when you think about it, in 1962, Watson, Crick, and Wilkins, they received the Nobel Prize. They received the Nobel Prize for their discovery of DNA in physiology and medicine. Mm-hmm. And sadly, Rosalind at this time had passed.
Yeah.
She passed.
She died at 37, so she passed away in
62. Was it 62?
No, 57, 58, somewhere in there.
Right.
Of breast cancer.
Uh-huh.
Or ovarian cancer.
From what they think was probably due to the exposure to all of the...
From the x-rays and
from all the x-rays through time. So, and ironically at that time, and I think it is still now, you could not, I mean, their out was, we can't give it posthumously to an individual. So because she had passed before everything was published in 1962, and Watson and Wilkins and Crick received, the Nobel Prize, so we can't award it to Rosalind because she has passed. I think the big question is, even if she hadn't passed, do you think she would receive the Nobel Prize? Would she have gotten the Nobel Prize along with her male counterparts at that time?
I think by 62 she, yes. Well, because Marie
Curie.
Yes.
But do you know that only because her husband, because we'll study her in the Matilda effect too, because she was married, her husband was involved in her research, and initially he was just going to receive the credit, and he fought for her to get the credit as well.
Okay, so I didn't know that. I knew she had won a Nobel Prize,
right?
But
so
I didn't.
Is it one of the things that maybe Watson and Crick and Wilkins would not, and maybe they would have? I think when you read, there's different research out there, as you can find in anything history or science, and some say no, and I think in Watson wrote a book, I believe it was Watson, and he did give her credit. I mean, he did say that she was responsible for, I think it was like at the back and some of that. Some people say it wasn't truly, wasn't truly the credit that she deserved, but then others said no, it really truly is the credit. So it's one of those things I think we will just
never know.
Never know. But one thing we do know,
she kicked butt.
She kicked butt, and she knew about the holes in coal.
That's true.
And that she was responsible for one of the most famous pictures of all time, and that if it weren't for Rosalind Franklin and that less than cordial attitude, we would not be able to watch all of are murder mysteries where
That's
they find the
right.
killer
The
based
true
on
crime
genetic
stuff.
DNA. Yes.
All those true crime podcasts and YouTube videos, we wouldn't have none of those.
And you think of all the research that is...
You know, and I would love to go back in time and just fly on the wall, observe her interacting with her male counterparts in her laboratory and just
Right.
see, is it because she was a woman in there and she was knowledgeable that they felt this way?
Right. And
Or is it because she had to have force behind her? I know what I'm talking about.
yeah, and you know, the field of science, we're kind of, you know,
You are not.
work can be kind of bossy and...
You are not
Yes.
social workers.
That's right.
Your hearts are
That
not
is right.
bleeding.
You know, there's that different kind of brain
Uh-huh.
there. So I think you would see those same characteristics from
Right.
her
Well,
male
it's funny.
counterpart.
My supervisor called me and we had like an accounting issue with somebody's paycheck. And she's like, so I need our accounting director to talk to them. But I want you and my immediate supervisor to be there because, you know, people who work with numbers. That's all right. We got this.
You know, that's what I think makes the world go round because we all have gifts, you know. I look at numbers, and I'm pretty good at math, but I see a lot of numbers. I love the
Right.
data side and all of that, but I don't like the accounting side. But you have to have those people that can dance, that can get along with other
That's right.
people, those people that have that science-based brain. I mean, I think it's, again, we go back to diversity.
You have to have personalities of all kinds.
Yes.
To make things happen. So
I agree with you.
You know, the numbers people that are analytical and black
Okay.
and white, you know.
And artsy people. I love artsy
Right.
people, but art scares me. I'm not creative at all. I mean, you give me a little, you know, we would have to do all those little, what do they call them, professional developments where they would want you to express yourself through art. That is the, give you this little piece of paper and some stuff and want you to, I'm like, no, can't I make it like a Venn diagram?
I am going to make a double helix. This is what
I mean, no,
I look like.
no, I don't want to do that. Can I make an ashtray out of a clay like what we used to make in art for my mom and dad when I was young? Now, you know, that's something I can relate to.
Yeah.
So here's to all those people because you have that very artsy, creative
yeah.
side. You have a lot of different sides. I mean, you have a little bit of everything, which makes you just kind of that perfect mesh.
Except science. I don't have a science side. I like, you know, let's mix this up and make the volcano
gonna say,
explode.
I think you do have your science side.
Yes.
Because you the lotion that you make.
Oh,
and all
yeah,
of
yeah,
those,
yeah.
I mean, you know how all of that.
And I
you
guess,
study
you know, the herbalism
and all of that,
that
stuff.
stuff
Yeah,
is,
that's
is very sciencey.
I don't know if you know all the holes in coal.
I don't.
Yes.
I know nothing about the holes in coal. Lava rock.
Yes.
I do know a lot about lava rock and, you know, using it as a diffuser.
Yes. See, you know about rocks.
So I guess that is kind of the holes in rock. Coal would probably work the same way.
I would think so. I would think so. Well,
But yes, it takes people of all kinds because you know these bossy women, they ain't gonna get nowhere if they don't have a social worker behind them saying this is how we say this.
okay. So this is a cute story, and you can edit this out. When your sister was younger, and you were off doing your I think your married college stuff, but
Oh, okay.
Ashley was young enough that she was for some reason at a track meet. I was at a cross country meet, and that's when I coached. And you know the runners were running by, and you know coaches staggered themselves out. Well, as your runner goes by, you yell at them. You know, it's like, come on, you can do this. Dig deeper. Take your hand from here. So I remember your sister looking at me and going, Trish, why are you yelling at them?
Why are you being so mean?
So, you know, I'm having to stop and explain, well, you know, sweetie, I'm trying to encourage them to do better, to move on. You can't just say, oh,
good job.
good job, let's maybe run faster. But, I mean, it does. It just takes all of those different sides.
It does.
As we have over here on the...
Yes, on the the other side of the camper
other
life.
side. Well, Rosalind, we thank you.
We do, and we hope you guys enjoyed her story as well.
And we forgot, I didn't go more into about how she went on to study RNA, and then we could get into DNA replication, but if anybody wants me to get into DNA replication,
leave it in the comments, and I will sit here during another podcast episode while she tells all about it, and I will nod. I believe her. That's what I'll say.
Occasionally, I do miss that teaching of DNA. So
I'll do the homework.
You do the homework. Okay, do the homework. All right.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Hey, thank you very much, everybody. Have a good day. Be kind
all the day, and be kind, please. We
Always.
need kindness.
Unless, like,
right
you're
now.
in the laboratory. I mean, sometimes in the laboratory you've got to be assertive, but you can still be kind and assertive.
And out on the track field.
There are times.
If you're a coach, if you're mom, calm down. If you're coach, be assertive.
That's right. Have a great day.